The recent controversy surrounding Star Wars Acolyte really has me frustrated at various things that the right-leaning side of YouTube tends to gloss over for various reasons one can only ponder. The inconsistency of what gets called woke in tandem with black people, or more so, black women in media being misused for virtue signal points by dumb neoliberal white women, UK citizens who can't help but incorrectly call things racist, or people who rhyme with these particular objects at the very top. The list of these misuses can be pretty big, but what a lot of people fail to realize is that a lot of these decisions seem to be made with the secret subtle intentions of stoking racial conflict, such as the controversy with The Little Mermaid. Regardless of if one likes or dislikes that movie and its race swap, every Disney higher up knew it would stoke racial conflict between black and white people when taking a classic movie from over 2 decades ago and then taking away her iconic red hair in tandem with changes to the skin tone. The list can go on with other race swaps, such as examples that mess with historical accuracy, such as Nordic Vikings, which are examples that make the outrage more of an objective case, to the point of Egypt suing Netflix due to them turning Cleopatra black. I think Netflix lost like $2 billion, I heard. But everything outside of historical cases should be taken with more of a grain of salt, but that isn't what happens most of the time. Now we are at the point where a black person just being the lead in a show, movie, or game is treated like a red flag and given the label of woke, even before the media comes out. As Resikin and I have said before, woke used to be a term within the black community that represented individuals who are aware of large-scale corruption, such as the CIA dropping crack and selling weapons to black neighborhoods. But now the term got hijacked by people who swing the other way, left-leaning or right-leaning grifters, to the point where the subjective slang has become something that Resikin and I define as controversial divisive behavior being promoted, and more specifically, normalized within a piece of media in a way that overtly, but becomes implicitly, detrimental to the plot itself. Examples like a random gay side mission in Spider-Man 2 that we talked about in our last collaboration. A black character just appearing in a trailer shouldn't be enough to call anything woke. If we circle back to Star Wars Acolyte, they won't admit it, but that show was called woke just for the appearance of a black female force-wielding protagonist showing up in the trailer. Now sure, Disney Star Wars, or Disney as a whole, has actually been quite guilty of pulling a bunch of progressive nonsense that shouldn't be bestowed upon kids, and I know the director is some filthy Harvey Weinstein assistant who said a bunch of dumb shit like calling R2-D2 a lesbian, or slandering the top tier prequel movies, or some out of touch actor claiming to be the first black actor playing a Jedi, along with the lead actor doing some weird dancing stuff. But I took the time to separate the art from the artist despite all that, unlike other people who just called it woke because of this frame appearing on various thumbnails, without even watching the show, or some grifting YouTuber that breaks down the show with a pre-existing bias to make it sound like the worst thing ever, when it's only mediocre at worst, such as focusing on minuscule details like small fight choreography moments that people would only notice when slowed down most of the time. Really odd criticism when the original trilogy is full of odd fight choreography moments I would look past because it's still a great story, but anyway. After watching the show for myself, I would say Star Wars Acolyte is just standard Disney Star Wars mediocrity that got treated a lot worse than other Disney Star Wars shows that did the exact same thing, whether it be progressive nonsense or bad story decisions of various sorts, like lore-breaking continuity errors and emasculated main characters. Boba Fett, where he gets folded a lot, unlike his lady sidekick as shown with the very first episode. Obi-Wan, with even more obvious continuity breaks between the movies I won't repeat, along with dumb moments like Leia being hidden under a man's coat, etc. But the point is, they were shitting the bed before, but as soon as a black woman got put on it, everyone jumped on that specific one a lot more. Now, a valid reason for backlash on Acolyte could be the show heavily alluding to a lesbian relationship, right? Valid issue, but oh wait, Andor did that first, and yet I hear it being mentioned a lot more with the Acolyte. There's bigger fish to fry too beyond Star Wars. The Boys. I can give The Boys some leeway for being an adult show, but that leeway can only go so far. In the first episode of their 4th season, I end up seeing two men French kiss randomly with next to no build-up. In Star Wars Acolyte, or just Disney Star Wars in general, I have never seen them take this progressive crap that far. Some may say, oh, the boys just went to crap after season 4. But no, those progressive ideals that mock traditional values have always been there. They just simply became more open about it over time. Despite some solid parts of the show I could give them credit for, such as Homelander's acting, at the end of the day, their societal commentary has always been reliant on strawmanning ever since their first season, such as an episode where Christianity is treated as some business that is exclusively there to use the faith of people for money. And Starlight abandons her religious beliefs for those reasons, along with other shoehorned reasons like how religion won't let you engage in unreproductive homosexual activities incapable of making a family. The concept of the plot for this episode is only something that some edgy atheist could love, or some dumb indoctrinated first world woman could love as an excuse to abandon her religious beliefs and spite her father by getting gangbanged for an adult video. That was episode 5 of season 1, by the way.
You know, it's funny because the show that you just described to me really does ring of something which prioritizes its woke message over the plot. If anything, the plot is that woke message. It doesn't really remind me of superheroes, or in this case, anti-heroes whatsoever. And the reason I say this is because Rings of Power is often described as being just that, something that only cares about the message and really doesn't do justice to the Middle-earth universe as a result of Amazon acquiring the rights to a lot of Tolkien's properties from the Tolkien estate, mind you. And what's funny to me is the fact that the only part of the show that they can potentially make an argument for wokeness in, you know, other than the race-swapped Harfoots we touched on in our other video, is when some of the residents of Numenor don't like elves and accuse Galadriel of coming to try and take their jobs. What a lot of people interpreted this as being is a kind of message pushing, where it's like, oh, see, Galadriel is being oppressed for no reason and attacked by these bigoted people. You know, just for being there, they're already accusing her of taking their jobs, even though she's not going to do that. That's not what she's there for. The argument can be made for that, but at the same time, even if that was the intention of the writers, that does not get in the way of the story at all. When in human history has there ever been a time where a people of a particular place didn't at least have a decent percentage of people within that people that didn't like foreigners and accused them of coming to take over or steal their jobs? You know, people simply don't like people that are not a part of their tribe. There's such thing as the in-group and there's such thing as the out-group. A lot of the people within the in-group don't like anyone in the out-group, even if the people in the out-group didn't do anything to offend them. It's just human nature. So for you to say that this little tidbit is, oh, it's woke preaching, when it makes sense in any show, in any context, in any history, in any culture, I just think that that is a reach. Especially when you have shows like The Boys, shows with plots like Joker just described, going the whole 1,000 miles about one little topic, making the whole plot of an episode about it. If Rings of Power had an episode dedicated to, you know, combating narratives surrounding immigration, okay, sure. I would say that no, it is indeed a woke show, but that little line, which isn't even expanded upon that much, no. I think you're reaching. I think you have an agenda against this show. I think that you feel like this show has to be woke because other YouTubers told you that it is, and that's why you're doing all this bullshit.
You see, this is why a lot of people don't take the new slang term for woke seriously. The word has no consistency. Resikin and I are sort of struggling to keep meaning in it due to it being a term that sort of needs to be used to get attention on YouTube when it comes to bringing up these issues. But I can understand people wanting to just make up a new word due to the subjectivity of the term that often gets misused. I can even delve into gaming as well, such as Assassin's Creed Shadows being given the label of woke before release on the mere sight of black once again, even though his historical accuracy is sort of there and established with media that predates this game, like an anime they gave him and other forms of media he's had. I've just seen white people saying that Japanese people are offended instead of actually hearing it from a Japanese person who has Ghost of Tsushima and other Japanese games to play. I don't think they care as much as all these Western channels are claiming they do. They're just using Japanese people to excuse their bias towards the skin complexion, even in the instance of it being inspired by history this time around, unlike Cleopatra that bastardizes it with a race swap. You have people calling him gay just because of some flimsy quote that a bunch of these far-right channels ran with, even though it's not even a confirmation. This could age badly if I'm wrong, but they probably won't even make him kiss another man or anything due to the heavy bans that game would receive in certain countries outside of Western shitshow countries, as I believe Assassin's Creed is a brand that does well in such a way that's more worldwide as opposed to being heavily reliant on Western sales due to the amount of cultures that franchise has represented. It's probably just queerbaiting, or at the very worst something optional like past Assassin's Creed games. But anyway, that unreleased game has more videos calling it woke than the already released Spider-Man 2 that forces your kids to watch a gay kid ask out another gay kid if they want to get the Miles Puerto Rico skin and 100% the game for a platinum trophy. I'll be transparent for a second and state that if you defend crap like Spider-Man 2 and The Boys from statements of it being woke, then you have no business using the term woke at all without being a laughable hypocrite I could laugh at within 2 seconds. If those two examples aren't woke, then nothing is. With all that being said, I'll say the quiet part out loud that a lot of these conservative channels don't have the balls to admit, but one can only conclude that the outlier that caused Acolyte or other examples to be received worse and given a harder label of woke than worse media is because of a black person being in the marketing and lead spot. And Resikin and I just don't associate a born skin tone with the word woke as opposed to a choice like a man being with another man, etc. But I can understand the other side of the fence given that a lot of new slang woke white women, UK cuck citizens, and dime pickers often use them as a virtue signal shield with examples I've already mentioned as something done with secondary intent of stoking racial conflict, as opposed to better uses of black characters like Luke Cage, Static Shock, Sheva from Resident Evil 5, and a bunch of other examples I could list off. Nobody gave a crap about this scenario or movie, but there's this Romeo and Juliet retelling with a race swap, and it's a pretty sad piece of evidence towards intentional, controversial miscasting given that they took a black woman of a more average appearance at best and casted her as Juliet, who's supposed to be gorgeous, and then putting her beside a guy like Tom Holland who gets extremely fangirled over. I can only imagine the hate mail she probably received due to these filthy higher-ups, sadly. I hate that shitty misuses like that are happening when a lot of the woke ideologies don't even come from minorities most of the time. I'll bring it all in with some actual facts and logic and not Ben Shapiro's fake version of facts and logic where he's against cancel culture unless it's his group that gets talked about. But anyway, that gay stuff and fake progressive virtue signaling is mostly done by white people anyway. Star Wars Acolyte isn't as horrible as others say, but it isn't something I would highly suggest given my deeper standards for Star Wars when keeping the first 6 movies in mind. But when looking at bits and pieces of progressive nonsense within media, you can look at the white woman director and writer who put it there, as it usually goes despite some black actor being used. You can Google Pride Parade or have a flashback to when you might have happened to walk by, and then realize that it was mostly white people you saw there. I'm not saying most white people are gay, as the white men who aren't gay can be quite vocal against that kind of thing at times, but it's sort of a fact that most flamboyant gay people are white, which therefore makes all this minority targeting on these first world issues revolving around the Pride movement quite illogical. You can't lump gay people and minorities within the same rant unless a bunch of Taiwanese traps just start mass immigrating to a ridiculous extent, like Indians did with Canada and a bunch of their jobs. I've worked Uber for around 1,000 deliveries, and I've pretty much never seen a black woman working at one of the 12 Tim Hortons I've been to, or even other stores I've been to, because of the objectively discriminatory hiring practices they pull for something as basic as coffee and donuts, akin to Starbucks that doesn't have that diversity issue. Racism only bad when a white man does it, but not when anyone else does the exact same thing that would get white people a discrimination lawsuit. But anyway, I got off topic. The point is, other minority areas don't fuck with this shit. Uganda banned homosexuality and had Canada's Prime Minister crying like a little punk ass bitch over it.
In our country, we will have our morals. We will protect our children. We are making this law for ourselves. We are making this law for our children. We are making this law for the children of our children. This country will stand firm. And once it passed, I can tell you, Madam Speaker, we are going to reinforce the law enforcement officers to make sure that homosexuals have no space in Uganda.
I want to begin by taking a moment to condemn in the absolute strongest terms the despicable law put forward by the Ugandan government discriminating against the 2S LGBTQI+ community.
Stop fucking crying, bitch! Where? I don't wanna fucking hear it!
It's usually dunked on within most black countries or areas such as the Caribbean. Indians and Hispanics are less likely to fuck with it as well, and then there's China, which is a really atheist area, and yet they still don't fuck with it. I won't pretend places outside of first world countries I listed off are perfect or anything due to various things that could be worse, such as food supply, and very low minimum wage, crime rates, and a lack of freedom in certain categories of life, but the point is, when another ethnicity that isn't white says something stupidly woke, they're usually very westernized and they talk in an accent that's found within the United States, Canada, or the United Cuckdom, which sorta insinuates something if you've been following along. This isn't a political right or left scenario either, as this stuff involving the normalization of LGBTP behavior was still happening while Trump was in office. Citing people of color being more likely to vote left doesn't really go in tandem with what destroys a country's values, especially when controlled opposition is what ends up being at play. Let's just say there's a group of people who run with these objects that YouTube won't let you mention too harshly. I've noticed that the far right channels tend to bootlick that certain area that GYATTS Kanye dislikes. But anyway, I'll repeat that this isn't a minority issue. Go Google Pride Parade and argue with what you see in the search results. But anyway, it's just such a shame that this illogical narrative of colored people being portrayed as gay more than Caucasians has been put out there despite the facts saying otherwise. They call it the double minority, where some higher up want some double minority points, so what do? They make the person of color gay. The gay couple in Spider-Man 2, the recent Doctor Who scenario I heard about, and the second gay guys in The Boys, as I mentioned before. There's plenty of other examples I could hunt down, such as black men having some subtle ritual of being put in a dress, but I'll circle back to Disney Star Wars with Lando, where they took a pre-existing black character and then made him pansexual, despite his first appearance in The Empire Strikes Back being released on the year of 1980, where the word pansexual essentially did not exist in anyone's vocabulary. This misrepresentation may cause one to not even want to be represented in the first place beyond black culture.
Oh, no doubt about it. As an Arab Muslim and as someone who knows other Arabs, whether they be Muslim or Christian, and other Muslims, none of us want to be represented. Sure, you have some of those Americanized or westernized Arab girls who are basically just white girls in hijab saying,
"Oh, we need representation."
But no, for the most part, we'd actually rather be portrayed as villains or even terrorists than, the good guys. Because when you do make us the good guys, like for the Eternals, for example, they literally made the Arab guy a homosexual. And even in the case of, what was that stupid show called? Miss Marvel? They also made her homosexual. I'm not sure if they did in the show, but I know for a fact that in the comics they did, which is ridiculous because this behavior is not only, not common in humans in general, it's especially not common in Arab or Muslim communities. So what kind of representation is this? Why are you representing these extremely not underrepresented, extremely overrepresented groups which only constitute a very negligible minority of this minority group that you're supposed supposed to be representing. If you want to properly represent a minority group, then you're going to have to make a person who represents that group for the most part. Not an exception to that group, which is so exceptional that it no longer even represents that group, and then try to twist that into being some sort of representation when the people you're trying to represent outright reject this kind of behavior. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here. But yeah, Hollywood, please stay away from my people, and I'd recommend that anyone who isn't white say the same. Even white people, like, let's be honest, do you like the way that you're being represented in films? No, because if you are represented in it, they're also going to bastardize you. They're also either going to portray you as comical villains or comically, I would say, liberal and progressive people who are just an insult to any people, let alone race.
But anyway, with all that being said, I really feel bad for black women who tend to be the poster lady and target when it comes to being misrepresented in media. I think the companies doing it and the people bashing them get away with it due to black women not really being there to defend themselves in the first place, given that the black nerdy girl who's also into a lot of pop culture fiction, like Marvel, DC, and Star Wars, is sort of a rarity, despite some experiences I've had. Black girls are more likely to be doing something else, whether it be degenerate behavior inspired by certain music videos where the managers of such videos are mostly, or the fact that black women are the most hardworking ethnic group when it comes to women within the labor force, which therefore keeps them too busy to deal with stuff like Star Wars Acolyte or some odd force mission in woke as fuck Spider-Man 2. They may be problems within the black community that I've touched upon before, but progressive gay stuff isn't one of them. Let's just say that the dogshit quote of "trans women are real women" isn't really a quote that commonly comes from luscious black lips as opposed to the thinner ones. Some black women may hoe around, but you know, they're actually the smallest minority in terms of women with OnlyFans, funny enough. I think it's white women at first, then Asian, statistically speaking, and going off of what can easily be observed from shitty ads. I guess it's because those other two ethnic groups that don't fuck with black women tend to buy those virtual coochie pics more, but I just can't take Asian on black racial discrimination seriously when they draw anime women with these goofball proportions while discriminating against the ethnic group that is the most likely to have such proportions, as opposed to Asians that are the least likely given the statistics of them being far more likely to be shorter to the point of their clothes being sized down. I'm just too smart to see intelligent life in anything that isn't my main buddy on Xbox, Resekin, or a reflective surface. Hell, do you guys remember that George Floyd scenario? Because I remember seeing those dumb, pointless Tuesday black squares on the accounts of white girls more than any other ethnicity, funny enough, with the name of Emily, pronouns, and a pride flag in the bio. Similar to the media I delved into, these people don't actually care about this shit. They just care about looking like they care. Like, I know I've already pissed off some of my demographics with this video, but black women don't do that shit half as much, and anyone without extreme bias or prejudice can admit that. It's what makes this all so tragic when I see my women that may have their issues on certain matters, stubborn behaviors like not staying in a healthy relationship, but they still have a fragment of their soul left to identify right and wrong when it comes to something as basic as gender. All this being comboed with faces that crack less and superior badonkadonk, beautiful faces, bodies, and even minds being misused by certain people who are ugly as fuck on the inside and outside. But anyway, thanks for watching this video that probably pissed off every possible demographic it could. You're a real Giga Chat if you made it this far. Check out the Discord server and check out other videos with similar subject matter to this video. Thanks for watching.